This is the walled vegetable garden, and when we came here 23 years ago it was completely grassed over. But it's on a south-facing slope and protected from the winds by the walls, and it's a wonderful medium for growing vegetables.
Absolutely.
This is the herb garden.
You're just coming in here and immediately getting a smell of the herbs.
They're
Absolutely stunning.
Herbs,
Absolutely
especially with
wonderful.
the sun on them. And then we've got these gooseberries, standard gooseberries in the middle.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Linda, I noticed there's pears, apples, I've got raspberries on my left here. So fruit is also heavily grown here, and now all these wonderful vegetables.
Well, these are our French beans, and then we've got fennel, leeks, chard, caldoneri, and then the runner beans. But these peas over here are very interesting.
Right.
We call them Bill's peas because a man called Bill Norman gave them to us originally years ago.
Right.
And they were meant to have come out of the tomb of Tutankhamun. So why don't you try one? They're absolutely delicious.
Tutankhamun was a pea eater, was he?
Well, I don't know if he ate the peas or they put them in the tomb for another reason.
Oh, right. So they've got a little Egyptian flavour on them.
They're big, fat peas.
They are. They're really large peas.
Yeah.
And delicious. They're genuinely delicious.
They are.
You call this the bog garden, is that right?
Yes. This was built out of necessity. The corner of the moat is lower in this corner. It seemed a good idea to turn it into a bog garden rather than try and forge up the moat or something.
Yeah.
And so we built this little area out into it so you can actually come out into the moat.
Tell me about the ancient monument status that Hindringham Hall has.
The house itself is grade 2 star, but the moat, the medieval fish ponds and the stream are ancient monument. It's quite unusual.
And having that status, how does that affect any alterations, amendments you want to make to the gardens?
Well, you're not actually really meant to put a spade in within 6 inches of the edge of the moat. I think they're talking about deep-rooted things, so if it's shallow planting they're not worried, but obviously they want to preserve what's there. But it does make it a bit special.
Yes, absolutely. I should think the reward is the fact that you are living in such an extraordinary and almost unique house.
Yes. Well, that's another matter. I mean, when you think we've only been there 23 years and the house, there was a stone building on that site in 1490, so we are just a mere drop in the ocean.
Yes. Well, it's a delightful spot, absolutely beautiful.
This is our water garden, and in the spring it's a mass of candelabra primulas and helleborus. This time of year it's largely going over and the large leaves take over, but there's still quite a bit of colour here.
These are all lilies here?
Those are hostas.
Hostas?
Hostas, and beyond it's hemerocallis, and they're planted like rivers beside the stream. So we've got large expanses.
Right. And this is a tributary of the River Stiffkey?
That's a tributary of the River Stiffkey that the moat feeds and feeds back into the moat as well.
So with all of these gardens that we've looked at, Linda, you must have a team of gardeners employed. How many do you actually have?
I actually have one very good gardener.
One?
One.
One person plus you?
One person plus me.
Remarkable. I mean, that is quite remarkable. All of these gardens that we've seen today, just beautiful, and you just have one person.
I do, but it's been planted so that it's not all out at the same time, so we concentrate on different areas at different times. And this is our West Lawn, which is our more formal planting.
Yes, it's a riot of colour.
It is riot of colour, and I love clashing colours like the agapanthus and the crochisma over there.
Right.
And I try to plant so that there's always another plant to come up through when the first one dies back.
Right.
And so we don't get bare spots in the garden. The colours at certain times of year predominate, and at the moment there's a lot of white in the garden. Other times of year you'll get a lot of pink or a lot of yellow.
Linda, I'm very enamoured by your lovely nut walk. What can you tell me about it?
Well, we think it was originally built so that the ladies of the house could exercise without getting out into the sun. It is nut trees, but the squirrels get the nuts before we do. Every February, end of January, February, we spend 2 weeks tying it back in. It will completely encroach and leave no space, so bits like this will come out this year because we need to keep a space to walk up and down. But it's a lovely thing, even without the leaves on, it's a beautiful thing.
And this brings us on to the beautiful east side. I imagine the morning sunshine is absolutely delightful, isn't it?
Well, this is the east lawn, and the kitchen to the house faces east. That's where all the servants would have been working in the house.
Right.
So it's surprising how many plants are happy growing on an east lawn. But there's a slight dip in this lawn, and at one time all the effluent from the kitchen would go across this lawn and straight into the moat.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
One of the remarkable features you notice immediately when you see the house is how many chimneys you've
Yes, well, it was their way of heating, and the only way they could heat was by fires. When the house was restored in 1900s, he did actually restore these finials on top. There would have been finials there before, but Gerard Goslin restored those. But what's interesting here is you can see the top floor, which is the attic floor, with the window at the end. The servants would have been sleeping in the attics, and that's how they'd have got their light all the way through.
They got the best views then, didn't they?
Yes, if they had time to look at them.
The medieval fish ponds at Hindringham took 3 years to build, with over 100 men working with spades, wheelbarrows, horses and carts.
Charles, nice to see you again.
Hi there, Chris.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome to Hindringham today. Now, I've really been looking forward to finding out about these medieval fish ponds. So, give me a little bit of background.
Well, they were built in the 12th century on the instructions of the Prior of Norwich. All the land of the manor of Hindringham was owned by the Prior. So he built the moat and the fish ponds all as one entity, covering about 5 acres of land. And actually, before he could do that, he had to move the river. You can see the river over there. So he moved the river out of the centre of the valley, so it went down the side, so he could have the moat and the fish ponds. Because the one thing you can't have is a river running through a moat, because when the river floods, of course, it brings all the sediment and fills up the moat.
Yes. So the idea of the fish pond was literally that, it was to breed fish for the prior.
The fish was a terribly important part of the monastic diet.
You've got here a number of different sized fish ponds that I know you've excavated yourself. Did each pond have a different type of fish in?
Yes, they would have had different fish. So you've got eel, you've got carp, perch, and you've also got pike.
The fish, I guess, were bred to a certain size and then shipped down to the prior.
That's right. So they would buy them in actually as little pikelets or little sort of fry carp. And then they grow them in the fish ponds. And then when they get to the right size, they transfer them into the stews. And the stews are the small ponds that run down the middle. So when the prior phones up in 12th century and says, hey guys, I've got the Bishop of Elmham coming to dinner and I want 100 eel and
100 carp.
100 carp
Yeah.
and the like, they can quickly fish them out probably of nets from the stews where they're more easily reached and they're the right size for eating. And then they load them onto the carts, which are lined up down there. And then they trundle off down to up to Norwich.
So were the fish transported live in large barrels?
Yes, they were. They're transported in hogshead barrels. That's the biggest beer barrel you could get.
So when you came here 23 years ago, there were no fish ponds. You've organised the excavation of them all.
This was just jungle, basically. You could hardly see anything. But it was known there were fish ponds here.
Right.
So what we did is got the water back into the fish ponds by damming the outlet, which is over there. And lo and behold, after about 3 weeks, all the ponds were full up with water.
Finally, do you get a request from the good Bishop Graham for his fish supper or any eels to be delivered to the Bishop's palace?
Well, I guess he's welcome to come and to try and fish. Many people have tried to fish our fish and not one has succeeded yet. But maybe the Bishop, with the help of God, could do something.
There aren't many moated Tudor manor houses in Norfolk. I can think of Oxborough, Mannington, maybe one other. But for Hindringham, it has a slightly different heritage. Its original status as a medieval fish farm for the monastic community in Norwich. The fact that the brick and flint came from the buildings at Walsingham and Binham that were being pulled down during the Reformation of the 1530s. The obvious 20th century refurbishment from Gerard Gosling and the care and nurture that Linda and Charles have given it since they arrived 23 years ago. And the fact that it's tucked away down a little lane off the high street as if it didn't want to be found. If you can make your way here to North Norfolk, I promise you Hindringham Hall is a beautiful spot to visit.